Hi everyone, it's Carol Woodbury from SkyView Partners, and today I want to talk to you about using PolicyMinder for open systems to help with your security administration tasks and automate those compliance requirements. We're looking at the console for PolicyMinder for open systems, where you can manage both Linux servers as well as AIX servers. Right now I'm just going to skip down to the files category on one of my AIX servers, where I've already got a number of templates already configured. Now, a template is simply a way to tell PolicyMinder which files or directories you want to look at and what attributes you want to examine. So we'll take a look at some of these in detail, but let's go and create a new template right now. So you just do a name. We'll just do test, and the description, more test, okay, and the path. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. So let's just work in the home directory. Now this notes section is something that you can add more description to, and it will show up when you print the policy. So it's a good place to put run instructions or a reason why you created this one template. Perhaps it helps you be in compliance with PCI, and maybe you want to note the section there for PCI compliance. It's up to you whether you add something there or not. Now the selections is where it gets interesting, and this is where you decide what you're going to look at. So for example, maybe you have an application, and obviously it wouldn't be in your home directory, but maybe you have an application and everything is supposed to be owned by a specific owning account, which is typical. And maybe it's Bob, so maybe you want to look for everything that is not owned by Bob, and all of the files that are not owned by Bob, when you run this thing called a compliance check, would be identified as being out of compliance. And that way you know that list of files is not owned by Bob. Okay, well that's one thing that you can do. But maybe you want to do a little bit more. So we're going to look at everything in the path, and remember we did home in this case. So let's look at the policies. Look at the things that you can specify and not specify. So again, you can specify the owner, Bob, root, or group, we'll just say root, which would be a really bad thing to do. Just using this as an example. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't do that. So permissions. So you know, obviously you don't want any kind of world writable. So there's going to be, we want that read to be no, write to be no, execute no. You can check your own permissions or the owner's permissions if you want to, and the group's permissions if you want to. And then again, you can look for files with the set UID bit set. Maybe they're supposed to be set. Maybe they're blatantly supposed to be not set. Okay, so that's several other things that you can do. Maybe you want to take a different approach. So maybe your selection is something like, well, I want to look at the attributes. And again, you can say, yep, I want to look at the files, and I want to find any files with the set UID bit set. This will find any of the files in the home directory that have that bit set. You can say none allowed, and so anything that shows up is out of compliance. So those are things you have to deal with. The other thing that you can do is, let's go back to that same example that we used before, looking for all the files in the home directory. Maybe you can take a look at the approach where you are not necessarily looking for the owner or the permissions, but what you want to do in this case is monitor. And you want to monitor for changes to the owner, the group, the permissions, the inode, and the checksum. What does this do? Well, the first time you run that compliance check, in this case, it would take a snapshot of the current owner, group, permissions, inode, and checksum. And it would run a checksum, I should say. So basically you would know the next time a compliance check runs whether the file was changed or not. What's this compliance check thing? Well, we're looking at a template. So this is your policy. This is the definition of how something, namely files and directories, are supposed to be configured from a security perspective. The compliance check will actually go out to the server that you name on the compliance check and actually compare this policy or the way you want it to be to how it actually is. So let's take a look at some of the templates that I've already configured and run. So if you take a look, in this case, we were looking for some specific permissions in the etc. Path. I'm looking at files by the name of audit. The policy says, let's see, permission was supposed to be write no for both the group and other, as well as execute no for other. And all of these things I'm showing you are based on best practices. So if we take a look at this, you can see that a lot of the permissions and even the group ownership is not correct. So that's what that would look like. Now what you can do in this case, if you want to, is enable this thing called Fix-It. What Fix-It is going to do is actually go out and make the changes. So it would change the group, it would change all those permissions to match what your policy compliance requirements are. So what are some of the other things you can do? Well, in this case, we were looking for world writable directories, and we went and we found some of those. So those are all listed. And we were looking in this case for some files without owners. Now, that's never good. So here's a selection. I'm looking for files without an owner and files without a group. And we found several of these. But this is a really great way to clean up your system. Maybe the user or the group has been removed from the system, and now these are orphan objects, so you can get those things cleaned up. And finally, we are looking here for some files with a set UID bit set and that are owned by root. So that would look like this. We're specifying the attributes. We're saying that the owner is root. The policy in this case is none allowed, that you aren't supposed to have those. But when we ran the compliance check, when we ran the actual comparison, we found that there are all of these files with the SUID bit set that are owned by root. Now, how do you run a regular compliance check? Okay, you've told PolicyMinder what to examine, which files and which directories to examine. Now you want to run something on a regular basis to check that. You don't want to have to do this by hand and remember to go out and check it. So what you can do is run a scheduled job. So I'm going to schedule a new job. We'll just call this files. And maybe you want to run this probably Monday morning at 2. Okay, and you can just decide which servers you want to go on. I'm just going to go on the 1, but you can go and select all of those. Then I'm going to add the task, so I'm going to check, and what I'm checking is the files, and I want to do all templates. But maybe I want to do all templates once a week, and maybe I have selected ones that I'm going to do every day. It's totally your choice. So I'll have that, and then I want a report. And the report is going to give me the compliance information, and the reason I want that report is because I'm going to be really lazy and email it to myself. And when I see that report, all it's going to list are the non-compliant items. So I can just save that. If I want to, I can run that right away to see what that looks like. Or I can just generate a report of the compliance requirements. So let's just do that real quick so you can see what that looks like. The policies that I want to look at are the files. We'll just look at all of those. And we'll just look at the compliance status. Okay, so let's just report on that really quickly. And it comes right to the page where it shows all of the reports. And when we pop that open, you can see all of the templates that were examined have a summary, and you can see what was examined and whether or not it's in compliance. So you can see exactly what is or out of compliance. Here is the template that was looking at the set UID bit set with the files that are owned by root. All of those that were found are listed. And here's the world writable directory. So again, what we're finding are just the exceptions. So you don't have to paw through a lot of forms, a lot of tables, a lot of stacks of paper to be able to run this. You can run it on a regular basis and have this report emailed to you. If you really wanted to and you were sure of what the settings were supposed to be, you could just follow up that compliance check with a Fix-It and have PolicyMinder for Open Systems go ahead and change those permissions and ownerships so you don't have to worry about it. This has been Carol Woodbury from SkyView Partners. I hope you have enjoyed this session on automating your security administration tasks for files and directories using PolicyMinder for open systems. Thanks and have a great day.